While covering Chapter 6, we talked about groups, institutions, and organizations. Groups are comprised of people who think of themselves as belonging together and who interact with one another. A primary group is a relatively small group of people who engage in face-to-face interaction over an extended period of time. And a perfect example of this is a family as pictured here. A secondary group are those who come together. They're usually formal and impersonal, and they're operating under a specific goal or activity. So pictured here are my colleagues from Rock Valley College as well as my colleagues from Highland Community College. We all come together to make sure that students receive the services that they need while they're attending community college. It's important to note that sometimes a secondary group, such as what's pictured in this first picture from 1996, where a bunch of hippies have gone to a bluegrass festival, can become a primary group, as seen in the picture in 2013, where many of us met at the bluegrass festival, befriended one another, and almost 20 years later, we host annual family picnics for our family tribe, where our children can interact and continue our love for music. In this, we can kind of see an example of the various types of groups. You have in-groups, which include members that share a sense of identity and belonging and typically excludes outsiders. So if people do not glom on to the quote-unquote hippie culture, they may not feel as comfortable participating in our family picnic every year. The out-groups are people who are viewed and treated negatively because they are seen as having different characteristics. So my family tribe, for instance, may be viewed as an out-group by mainstream America. Let's not forget reference groups, which are the people who shape our behavior, values, and attitudes. And certainly for the children pictured in this second picture, some of their reference groups might include their adopted aunts and uncles. We also talked about organizations and institutions this week. As you'll recall, organizations are those complex and structured secondary groups designed to achieve specific goals in an efficient manner. Characteristics include social statuses and roles that are organized around shared expectations, norms governing social relationships that specify rights, duties, and sanctions, and a formal hierarchy that includes leaders or individuals who are in charge. There's different types of formal organizations, such as a utilitarian type, where we're providing an income or other specific current or future reward. A normative organization are those organizations where people come together with shared interests. The example I used in class was that of a neighborhood watch program. Finally, we have coercive organizations. Those are largely involuntary memberships. So an example of a formal coercive organization may also be known as a total institution, such as a prison or a wing of the military. Now, within our conversation, we talked about bureaucracies and all of the dysfunctions associated with that. And we also talked about various studies that took place to take a look at things such as group conformity, lack thereof, power over leadership, and different types of leadership, such as authoritarian style, dictatorship style, or laissez-faire style. Finally, we applied all of these concepts to the various theories we've been studying throughout the semester. So the first theory that we talked about was the macro approach of functionalism. And here we know that with groups and organizations, the functionalism approach states that all of the pieces that are prevalent in society are composed of interrelated, mutually dependent parts, and they work together to promote stability and solidarity. Now, one issue with this particular theory is that it does exaggerate cooperation, and it tends to gloss over worker satisfaction and alienation. The second theory we talked about was conflict theory. With conflict theory, groups and organizations are said to promote inequality that benefit really just the top of the hierarchy and not the workers. The use of promotion methods to hire people that are like those in charge lead to things such as the Peter Principle. One criticism of this particular theory is that it assumes that if equality were to be in play, we would actually have a more successful and productive organization, and we don't know that that fact is necessarily true. The third theory that we explored was the feminist theory. With feminist theory, as it applies to organizations, is this thought that across all social classes, women are consistently treated worse than men. And here we see the prevalence of the glass ceiling, where attitudes or biases are present that prevent women from advancing to leadership positions. The final theory that we talked about was symbolic interactionism. In this micro-scale theory, how it applies to groups and organizations is that it takes a look at an individual's perception and definition of a situation, and that is what shapes the group dynamics and organizations. In this particular theory, individuals are able to make choices, change rules, and mold their own identities. But the criticism with symbolic interactionism theory as it applies to groups and organizations is that, of course, it ignores the macro level factors that do affect workers and consumers. Okay, guys, so in a nutshell, that was groups, organizations, and institutions. Be ready to talk about deviance and social control next week.